This is Mike Brown's applied research presentation for ACTE 633. So as far as my choice in content, I decided to go with students with specific learning disabilities in the online classroom. Uh, as a public school employee, my classroom is heterogeneously grouped with all ability levels in all of my classes. So I have students that have specific learning disabilities in the same class as students that have been labeled as gifted. So this is kind of an important topic for me in my classroom and my educational plan. As far as the authors from my research that I looked into, they wanted to determine if there was a correlation between students with learning disabilities and their success in the online classroom. They did this by using a couple different methods. Why is this important? As educators, we need to make sure that we meet the needs of all students in our classrooms. It doesn't matter what their ability level is, and making sure that those students with disabilities are getting a fair shot at their education. As far as the method of the study, the authors looked into what's called the UDL scan tool. So they looked at online classrooms, fully online, asynchronous and synchronous, as well as blended classrooms. And then they determined, as far as the methodology goes, how those fell into the UDL plan. And as far as that goes, they utilize what they call the UDL scan tool. The scan tool measures the effectiveness of online content by using specific questions that the user then plugs the answers into, and they use what they called smart responses. So it kind of builds. There's up to, I think, 130 or so questions that it can ask to determine the effectiveness of the content portrayed. The results for the research essentially were kind of mixed. They said that the results are dependent upon the accessibility and the appropriateness of the content that's being presented to the students. So if you have rich content, you're going to have good success. If not, then the students are going to have struggles. So this is where the educational team kind of comes into play. The educators, as well as the students, as well as policymakers, need to make sure they're all on board to assist the needs of those students in class. This is where things like the UDL scan tool and other existing ways of assessing content come into play. They also stressed about the open communication of teachers. As far as the justification, the authors, though they had a very generic conclusion, it is justified that, examining the content more stringently is going to have better, effects for students with disabilities. As far as how are these applicable in our classrooms, in the virtual classroom, the virtual classroom is going to be an inclusive classroom as well. A lot of our students are going to have disabilities that we may not even be aware of at the time that we have them. So as far as that goes, making sure that the content that we provide is able to meet the students where they are is super important. We need to make sure that it's as accessible as possible for as many different students with needs as we can get. So as far as the tech, the UDL scan tool is completely free. I'll link to that in the description or in the caption box for my post. But there's other software that's like it. And as I said earlier, communication is key with educators. So the scan tool is great if you use it on a personal level. But what's even better is if you find content that works really well or doesn't by using the scan tool, make sure you weed that out and get the stuff that doesn't work out of the field for teachers that you're in connection with. Lastly, how does this link to the class, that the 633? We talked about motivation and motivational factors. The students that have a disability, specific disability in reading comprehension, attention deficit disorder, even physical disabilities, are going to have a hard time learning to begin with. So making sure that you can motivate them in your classroom is super important. And being unable to understand the content that's being presented because of its method is only going to hinder that motivation. So applications of things like the UDL scan tool are really going to help vet that information out for those students so you can better meet their needs in the classroom. the big thing here, big connection, is the UDL standards. So teachers really can struggle to properly meet all the needs that students have in their classroom. So the UDL structure allows the students to kind of grow in their education in a meaningful way. So that way that they are invested, kind of tying that motivation portion back into this as well. That is all the time we have. So thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate it. The links are in the source material for the post, and go ahead and check them out. Thank you very much.